legendary dragons, and named after an internet service provider. It's AOL. Ha 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 ha. The Dawn Sky. 5 mana, 5/4 dragon spirit with flying and vigilance. When AO the Dawn Sky dies, choose one. Look at the top 7 cards of your library, put any number of non-land permanent cards with total mana 4 or less from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and put 2 1/1 counters on each permanent you control that's a creature or a vehicle. So AO has a need for speed, you know, the Bugatti Veyron, it's revving up in the garage. And the main thing that I like about this is that second ability, you know, the fact that you can dig through your deck to get any number of non-land permanents with mana value 4 or less. And that's what we're going to be centering the deck around here. But before we go any further, please subscribe to this channel. Going to be making videos like this for every single legendary creature, so come and join me. What fun and frolic we'll have. Anyway, without further ado, let's have a look at my top 5 for AOL Broadband. And in at number 5, we've got Sacrifice Outlet. Or outlets. Woohoo. Because we want to be able to make sure our commander will die. Claws of Gix is a fantastic one because it fits in the theme of the deck. When we look at the top 7, pardon me, it's total mana value of 7 or less. So, 4 or less. So this is a 0 mana sacrifice outlet, but not only we can sacrifice our creatures, we can sacrifice any permanent to gain 1 life. The gaining 1 life, not that important to be quite honest, but it's fantastic because we can manipulate our lands and things like that later on. And just having a sacrifice outlet on the field is always good. And the life gain can be pretty substantial. Similarly, we've got Renounce, a 2 mana instant. Sacrifice any number of permanents. You gain 2 life for each one sacrificed this way. And, you know, this can come in really clutch when you're, you know, down to your last sort of life points. All your wizard hats have fallen off. Your beard's starting to molt. You're not the wizard you used to be. Well, this can allow you to rebound and regain a ton of health, which is really nice. And who needs lands, really? But we've got a couple of ways we can manipulate that later in the game, which makes this sack outlet wonderful. Then we've got Blasting Station. 3 mana artifact, tap, sacrifice a creature. Blasting Station deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So ping to your heart's content. And then, whenever a creature comes into play, you may untap Blasting Station. That's not just us as well. That's whenever an opponent's creature comes in. So if we have some recursive threat, or maybe we've got a way to bring back our commander, something like that, we can sacrifice the commander, it comes back, untaps it, sacrifice it again. Just dig through our deck really nice. And it's a permanent, so we can get it off our commander's ability. Then we've got a Worthy Cause. 1 white for an instant with buyback. So you can pay an additional 2 to get it back to your hand after you've cast it, if you pay the buyback cost. Sacrifice a creature as an additional cost. This is the new wording. Gain life equal to that sacrifice creature's toughness. So we can use this on our commander, buy it back to trigger it, and then we've got it, you know, in reserve whenever we need it. And gaining the life is pretty cool. Then let's have a look at my number 4. So in at number 4, we've got some vehicles. I talked about the, you know, Bugatti Veyron, but we don't quite have that. We just have this large mech. It's Peace Walker Colossus, 3 mana, so we get it off of commander's ability. For a vehicle, pay 2. Another target vehicle you control becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Because what tends to happen because of the crew mechanic, meaning you have to tap a creature with, you know, power 4 in this instance, you tend to only be attacking with 1 vehicle, but we can just pump mana into it and make sure we have it. And it's a 6/6. Pretty good. And our commander, you know, being 5 power, is able to crew this pretty nicely. Then we got the Weatherlight, 4 mana for a vehicle with flying, 4/5 and crew for 3. Whenever Weatherlight deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a historic card from among them and put the rest into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And the historic thing is a artifact, a legendary, or a saga. And I'm really basing this deck in artifacts. I think that is the main sort of way that we can make this shine. And my number 1 will show that. So this is a great include. And because it's 4 CMC, we can get it off our commander. Then there's a Consulate Dreadnought. I love this. 1 mana for a vehicle with crew 6. So you're going to have to be tapping tons of different things to make it a creature. But it's a 7/11. It's a convenience store. It stocks all sorts of things. You know, if you go over to Asia, they sell delicious hot dogs. and cheese toasties and stuff like that. Don't know about America. I don't think I've ever been in one in America. But then on the sort of historic train, there's the Daring Archaeologist. 4 mana, 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, you may return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Very, very fitting with the artifact sort of tribal themes I'm going for. And whenever you cast a historic spell, put a 1/1 counter on Daring Archaeologist. So for all of these artifacts we're casting and all of these vehicles, things like that, this is just going to keep on growing. And 4 CMC, so our commander can get this if we so desire. Then there's Mishra's Self-Replicator, 5 mana, so our commander can't get it. But whenever you cast a historic spell, you may pay 1. If you do, create a token that's a copy of Mishra's Self-Replicator. And that has this ability. So we're going to be casting a lot of instants. No, we're not. We're going to be casting a lot of historic cards so we can just make absolutely ridiculous amount of the self-replicators. You know, very mana intensive, but we can make a nice little army. Then the Bomat Bazaar Badge, 4 mana, 5/5, crew for 3. But when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. So not the end of the world, keeps churning through your deck. And this is what I like about this commander. We can really keep going, you know. When we sacrifice our commander, we can just get this because it's 4 CMC, but at least we're drawing a card. It's a bit of advantage. Very, very nice use of the card. And finally, the Smuggler's Copter. 2 mana for a 3/3 vehicle with flying. Whenever it attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card and crew for 1. So you're going to bound to have like a bunch of little idiots flying around. You're going to be able to crew this and then filter through your deck. Maybe put things into your graveyard. Maybe that'll come up in a second. Which takes me on to number 3. And at number 3, we've got Smokestacks. Now, I think this commander can make a really, really cool stacks deck. Because when it dies, and you know, we want ways to sacrifice it, Smokestacks being one of them, we're going to get advantage. We're going to advance our board state by churning out a bunch of permanents, hopefully. And Smokestacks being 4 CMC, we can get it off our commander's ability. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a Sut counter on Smokestacks. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a permanent for each Sut counter on Smokestack. Now, incredibly powerful, but it may be better than you think it is. The thing is, both those abilities start at the start of your upkeep. So what you can do, first turn, there's no Sut counters, no one's sacrificing anything. But get back to your upkeep. Well, we can stack it so that we put, we sacrifice 0 permanents first, and then we put a Sut counter on it. So our opponents then have to sacrifice one thing. So we're always a step ahead. Really, really great card. Similarly, there's the Spell Type Enforcer. 5 mana for a 3/3 Elephant Wizard. What a creature typing that is. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player sacrifices an opponent unless he or she pays 1. So we're going to get ahead on the board. It is 5 mana, so we can't cheat it in with our commander, but it's a really nice taxing effect. It's like Thalia on steroids, and it's an elephant. Who doesn't like that? Then there's the World Queller, so that we can really manipulate the board state. 5 mana, 4/4 Avatar. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may choose a card type. If you do, each player sacrifices a permanent of that type. So, you know, a real problematic Planeswalker, well, just choose Planeswalker. We don't sacrifice anything because we probably don't have one. They lose out on that. We can really manipulate this. It could even be land if you really want to go after someone's mana. And it's symmetrical, so everyone has to do it. It's wonderful. Then there's Cataclysm, 4 mana for a sorcery. Each player chooses from among the permanents he or she controls an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a land. Then sacrifices the rest. Ooh, so powerful. We could keep our commander around or sacrifice our commander to dump a bunch of things onto the field. You know, at least we hope we would. This card can just end up winning games. It's like an Armageddon on steroids in this deck. Which brings me on to number 2. And at number 2, well, we've sacrificed all these things. Then, why not with Fate's Reward to bring them all back? We sacrificed our commander. We bring that back so we can sacrifice it again and just splurge more things onto the field. Amazing card. 4 mana, instant, return to the battlefield all permanent cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. Now, earlier I'd spoke about, you know, Rings of Gix or whatever it is, where you can sacrifice lands. Well, this brings lands back. Ooh. This could be used, say you've got 10 lands on the field. we can sacrifice all those lands, tap them for mana before we do it, bring them all back, and they come back in untapped. So we can then tap them for more mana. This card is amazing. And if we played something like Cataclysm, where everyone else has lost everything, well, we just get to regain all of our lands and they lose out on everything. Wonderful card. Wonderful. Then Triumphant Reckoning. It's 9 mana, so it's a bit expensive. Sorcerer, return all artifacts, enchantments, and planeswalker cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Open the Vaults is another version of this. 6 mana, return all artifacts and enchantment cards from all graveyards to the battlefield under their owner's control. So these are really more sort of going down the artifact route. I definitely would be, and if you only see number 1, you'll see why I'm sort of saying that. This is a fantastic card. Both of these are amazing. This one, yes, it is symmetrical, similarly to Second Sunrise, but we can really break the synergy of that. Second Sunrise, 3 mana instant. Oh, sorry about all the coughing, I'm not very well. 3 mana, each player returns all artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and land cards that were put into his or her graveyard from play this turn. So, we're sacrificing everything. We can bring it back, creates an amazing turn. We can sacrifice our commander, bring it back, sacrifice it again, dig 14 cards deep. There's so many good ways that you can use that card. Similarly, there's Planar Birth. So if we're sacrificing all of our lands, this is an amazing card to have. 2 mana for a sorcery. Put all basic lands from all graveyards into play under their owner's control, tapped. A great way to rebuy all of the things you've sacrificed. And look at the art. Look at that little sort of lamb thing. It's amazing. And he's just pouring dust onto the floor. I guess he's birthing a plane. I have no real clue what the story is. But then we have the Pegasus Stampede, another great use of your lands. 2 mana for a sorcery, buyback, sacrifice a land. So we can sacrifice a ton of lands, pay 2 mana. Put a 1/1 white Pegasus creature token with flying onto the battlefield. So we create a nice big army, sacrifice all our lands, and then rebuy them back with Second Sunrise, things like that. Brought Back is another example. 2 mana, instant, amazing card. Really, really cool. Then there's Magus of the Balance. I would say put Balance in, but Balance is banned. I found this out last time I put Balance on one of these lists. 2 mana, Human Wizard, pay 2, pay 5, tap, sacrifice Magus of the Balance. Each player chooses a number of lands they control equal to the number of lands controlled by the player who controls the fewest, then sacrifices the rest. Players discard cards and sacrifice creatures the same way. Ooh, it's pretty miserable to play against this sort of effect, but as it's a human, you have to pay 5, it has to be unsummoning sick. Your opponents can deal with this. I won't feel too bad about doing this. It's okay. It's okay to do. And that brings me on to number 1. And I've really talked about the artifact side of things here. And Urza's Bauble and all of the baubles and free sort of card draw are amazing. I've loved these cards for ages. It's very similar to Street Wraith, cycling, pay 2 life. Cycling, best mechanic ever printed. To draw a card. This basically makes your card into 1 less card in your deck, which doesn't sound that important. So your card's on, your deck's only 98 cards, but it adds to the consistency of what our deck is trying to do. And the most important thing is when we sacrifice our commander and we look at those top 7, this is a free hit. We still get 4 other CMC of mana to put into it, and it draws us a card. It's a great way of getting advantage out of this commander and out of mono white. So it's 0 mana, tap, stack, look at the top card at random, look at a card at random and target player's hand. You draw a card at the beginning of next upkeep. Yes, it's the next upkeep, so we don't get to use it straight away, but it is refilling our hand. Say our commander, we've cast our commander, looked at the top 7, we got 3 effects like that. Our commander's just drawn us 3 cards, not straight away, but we're going to get those 3 cards eventually. This card is amazing, and so is Lodestone Bauble. 0 mana for an artifact, pay 1, tap, sacrifice Lodestone Bauble, put the top 4 up to 4 target basic lands card from a player's graveyard on top of his or her library in any order. That player draws a card at the beginning of next turn's upkeep. The actual effects on these are, garbage. But it's more important that we're going to be drawing a card. It's just making our deck smaller and smaller. You can play enough effects like this, so essentially our deck is only 90 cards. It makes it more consistent. You can draw a whole hand of these and just sacrifice them all. You've dug 4 cards deep, or our commander could get them off the top. So Arkham's Astrolabe, you know, the tyrant of modern. 1 snow mana, so you have to be playing snow basics. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. It's simple. Pay 1, tap, add 1 mana of any colour. But you can get this off our commander's ability. Jesus, I don't feel good. Then Mishra's Bauble, the one that you've probably seen a lot in Modern. 0 mana for an artifact. Tap, sack it. Look at the top card of target player's library. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So we're going to be drawing a card eventually. Really, really nice. Just does everything that the deck would want to do. Draws us cards. And then here's a couple of other versions of this effect that cost 1 mana. Scrabbling Claws, 1 mana, artifact. Tap, target player exile a card from his graveyard. Or pay 1, sacrifice Scrabbling Claws, exile target card from a graveyard, draw a card. Really, really nice. You know, a nice bit of graveyard hate. Always important to have, especially in this sort of high-powered sort of world that we're living in. But being able to manipulate the graveyard is wonderful. And then there's Conjurer's Bauble. 1 mana for an artifact. Tap, sacrifice Conjurer's Bauble. Put up to 1 target card from your graveyard to the bottom of your library. Draw a card. Ooh. It might be useful. You might have tutors in mono white. For enchantments anyway. And then there's Chromatic Star. 1 mana for an artifact. Tap, pay 1, sacrifice Chromatic Star, add 1 mana of any colour. When it's put into a graveyard of the battlefield, draw a card. And the great thing with all of these that I forgot to mention, things like Second Sunrise, bring all of these back. So just 3 mana on Second Sunrise, you could potentially draw in 4 more cards or something like that. There's so much play for these sort of cards, and I absolutely adore them. And those are my top 5 cards for AOL, the broadband provider. Really, really cool commander. And, you know, it's just seems like a really quite a powerful card. And mono white, it's, yes, you have to build the deck in a certain way, but it generates advantage, which is what we need in mono white. So all around quite cool. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this and can put up with my coughing. Sorry about that. And I'll see you soon. Bye.